Coming up in a newscast tonight, the nation's daily COVID-19 tally reaches a new high at over 13,000. In response, authorities are shifting to Omicron-tailored virus prevention measures. With tensions rising between the U.S. and Russia over Ukraine, President Joe Biden claims he would consider imposing sanctions on President Vladimir Putin if Moscow invades Ukraine. President Moon Jae-in calls for a speedier response to tackle Omicron. He emphasizes the need to secure more hospital beds and self-test kits. Hello and welcome. I'm Daniel Che here to bring the latest. Let's begin with the top story at this hour. South Korea reported a record high of daily COVID-19 cases at more than 13,000. Authorities are adopting new procedures for dealing with the virus in light of the fast-spreading Omicron variant. These include shortening self-isolation period for vaccinated individuals. Shin Yeon starts us off.
South Korea on Wednesday recorded 13,012 new infections, the highest amount ever recorded in the country. This is up by more than 7,200 from the same time last week. Health authorities had predicted this surge as Omicron is known to be at least 2 times more transmissible than Delta. With infections expected to increase from this more transmissible strain, the Prime Minister spoke of changes to virus prevention measures.
We shouldn't be complacent, but we don't need to be overly anxious about this situation. The government has been preparing in advance for Omicron by administering booster shots and antiviral pills to more of the senior population. Now we will prioritize bringing the number of critically ill and deaths down and give out exact information as to what Omicron entails and how we can tackle it.
South Korea has restored most of its medical capacity as the number of critically ill patients aged over 60 has been cut to 1/3 of the numbers seen last month. Back in early December, more than 7 out of 10 ICU beds were occupied. But now, little over 17% of ICU beds are in use. Health authorities have also drawn out specific measures from Wednesday to contain the spread of Omicron. Under the new measures, PCR tests will only be used on high-risk groups and those suspected to be infected. Everyone else will use rapid antigen test kits at the testing sites instead. These measures will first be introduced in 4 regions hit hardest by Omicron, like Jeollanam-do Province and Pyeongtaek City in Gyeonggi-do Province. Authorities have also made changes to the number of days a person infected with COVID-19 has to self-isolate, based on their vaccination status. For infected people who have been fully vaccinated, the quarantine period has been reduced from 10 days to 7. Those who haven't been fully vaccinated must stay in self-isolation for 10 days. Under these new measures, to be considered fully vaccinated, 14 days must have passed since the person received their second jab or booster. For those who had 2 shots, no more than 90 days must have passed since their last jab to be eligible for the shorter isolation period. Shin Yeon, Arirang News.
President Moon Jae-in chaired a meeting on the country's Omicron response. The South Korean leader called for the utmost measures to secure enough hospital beds and to make sure there are no disruptions in supplying self-testing kits. Kim Min-ju shares with us his remarks.
President Moon Jae-in has called on the government to speed up its response against the Omicron variant that's fast spreading in the country. He chaired an Omicron response meeting Wednesday to review the situation himself before South Korea starts its Lunar New Year holiday.
President Moon stressed that the government must speed up decision-making regarding response measures against the Omicron variant. Looking at the domestic situation, the rates of severe cases and fatalities are low due to the high rates of vaccination and booster shots among our senior citizens. The president said there's a need to let people know about this so they are not overly concerned.
President Moon also highlighted the need to secure enough hospital beds, especially for children, due to a sudden increase in the number of new patients. He also called on the government to keep close tabs on the production of self-testing kits, noting the risk of a disruption in supply. Moon also called on his aides to consider providing free self-test kits to low-income people or cutting the price. The top office also quoted Moon as saying that assessments of South Korea's COVID-19 response will depend on how it deals with Omicron. Moon said that while it's important for people not to let down their guard, they also should not get overly worried, noting that the government has been preparing for the past month. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Staying here in the nation, rapid antigen tests are being used in select regions. To learn more about the process, our Kim Hyun-sung traveled to a center outside the capital in Anseong.
COVID-19 testing centers are getting ready for Omicron. Starting from Wednesday, 4 parts of South Korea that have seen widespread Omicron infections, Pyeongtaek and Anseong cities in Gyeonggi-do Province, Gwangju and Jeollanam-do Province, will have rapid antigen self-test kits available at their testing centers. These quick-to-use kits are here to test as many people as possible to help cope with the steep spike in infections.
These rapid antigen tests are like screening tests. When Omicron cases increase, we won't be able to test everybody with PCR. That's why we need to first test people with these rapid tests.
Now there's a line for people who are waiting to get their PCR tests. And over here, there's a new line for people who are waiting to get their rapid antigen tests. After they get tested, they just need to wait for 15 minutes over here until they get their test results back. I've also tried the rapid antigen testing myself. On the first day of trials, the clinic's medical workers were there to help me and others through the process to minimize confusion. But these rapid tests are actually supposed to be self-administered. Once there's an overflow of people coming here to get tested, it's going to be up to themselves to test for the virus, so that health workers don't carry the unbearable workload alone. Now I'm pretty nervous to see if I test positive. If I do, I have to get tested again with the PCR test along with the other high-risk groups. High-risk groups include those who are 60 or older, those whose health conditions put them at high risk, or those who have enough reason to suspect that they have been infected with COVID-19. Luckily, I have tested negative, so I'm good to go. If I want, I can even get a vaccine pass waiver that lasts for 24 hours. From Saturday, the rapid antigen tests will be rolled out at testing centers nationwide. Kim Hyun-sung, Arirang News.
South Korea is making adjustments to improve at-home COVID-19 treatment system. This is in preparation for a further increase in the number of infections fueled by Omicron. Choi Min-jung sheds light on the shift to a more Omicron-tailored model.
As expected, the Omicron variant has become the dominant strain in South Korea. With the number of cases expected to surge further with this highly transmissible variant, health authorities are aiming to improve the current management system for at-home treatment to tackle the increase in cases.
I'm here in Anseong City in Gyeonggi-do Province, where at-home treatment is already widely in place. Very recently, the city introduced its own strategy for at-home treatment to tackle the spread of Omicron.
We judged that it would be difficult to keep up with Omicron, so we developed the so-called Anseong model. We hope this could be the starting point for change in Korea's COVID-19 response system.
A health expert from the Gyeonggi Provincial Medical Center Anseong Hospital says that the key effect would be to increase efficiency by relaxing some of the current protocols in order to reallocate resources.
We can reduce the number of calls from the current 2 times a day to once. Then we can stop calling those who are at low risk and only call patients when it is necessary. What's important is to manage patients in the most appropriate manner for each local government.
This being said, the city says that its community-based model is much more efficient when it comes to patient allocation. Instead of having the central government allocating hospital beds to patients depending on their health condition, local hospitals would be in charge of classifying whether patients could stay at their homes or be moved to residential treatment centers or the ICU after checking their health condition. This would allow healthcare providers to make prompt on-site changes, just like when people go to see doctors when they catch a flu. The capital, Seoul, has also decided to expand the number of clinics managing at-home treatment. From early February, small clinics will be able to look after up to 30 patients. On a nationwide scale, the quarantine period for those who are fully vaccinated and being treated at home has been reduced from 10 days to 7 days starting Wednesday. The government has also vowed to increase the proportion of patients being treated at home from the current 50% to 90%. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
A new breakthrough in COVID-19 testing. A team of scientists at the Korea Institute of Science and Technology developed a unique screening method to detect the virus within 30 minutes. It's a highly sensitive portable biosensor, and according to KISS, the results are as accurate as a PCR test. The new platform detects the virus through a special receptor enzyme shared by all known variants. Lee Gun-hee, who heads the team, says the new method will soon be commercialized after going through a standardization process. With Russian troops amassed along the Ukrainian border, Washington warns there could be enormous consequences if Moscow makes aggressive moves. Biden would consider imposing personal sanctions on President Putin. This comes as both sides bolster their forces amid heightened tensions. Bae Eun-ji has the latest.
U.S. President Joe Biden has said that he would consider imposing sanctions directly on President Putin if Russia invades Ukraine. When asked on Tuesday local time if he would ever see himself personally sanctioning Putin if Russia did invade Ukraine, Biden said he would. He also said that he might deploy U.S. troops, but noted that there's not going to be any American forces moving into Ukraine at this time.
What would lead to that is what's going to happen, what Putin does or doesn't do. And I may be moving some of those troops in the nearer term, just because it takes time.
His remarks come a day after the Pentagon put about 8,500 U.S. troops on high alert for possible deployment to Eastern Europe, when requested by NATO. Biden also stressed that there will be enormous consequences if Putin were to go in and invade, not only in terms of economic and political consequences, but also enormous consequences worldwide.
This would be the largest, if he were to move in with all those forces, it would be the largest invasion since World War II. It would change the world.
Starting this week, the U.S. has deployed aircraft carrier USS Harry S. Truman to the Mediterranean under NATO control. The carrier and strike group will participate in the NATO military training exercise in the Mediterranean Sea until next Friday. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki had said that this is the first time since the end of the Cold War that a U.S. carrier strike group has gone under NATO command. But she said that this is something that had been planned since 2020. Russia, which has denied planning an attack on Ukraine, announced that it had launched drills including 6,000 troops near Ukraine and in the Crimea region. Its defense ministry said the drills included firing exercises with fighter jets, bombers, and anti-aircraft systems. Bae Eun-ji, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, South Korea's National Security Council reviewed the possible implications of the Ukraine situation on the economy and security in Northeast Asia. The NSC held a meeting a day earlier to evaluate the severity and urgency of the developments and to review safety measures for Korean nationals there. The Foreign Ministry and the NIS have been keeping close tabs on the matter from a month ago amid potential military conflict. They're working closely with the U.S. The ministry placed 15 of Ukraine's 25 regions under a Level 3 travel advisory and asked Korean nationals living in these areas to leave as soon as possible. Around 600 Korean nationals are reportedly residing in Ukraine. The U.S. once again highlighted its commitment to achieving denuclearization on the peninsula using diplomacy and dialogue. This follows North Korea's launch of what appeared to be cruise missiles. In an unusual turn of events, the regime has not commented on the test. Kim Da-mi has the full story.
The U.S. State Department Press Secretary Ned Price said Tuesday that Washington remains committed to the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula through diplomacy and dialogue. He then reiterated Washington's long stance that there is no hostility toward Pyongyang. The statement followed what appeared to be the launch of 2 cruise missiles by North Korea on Tuesday. The White House Principal Deputy National Security Advisor John Pfizer also told CNN the same day the North's continued missile activities threaten peace and security, while the UN spokesperson for the Secretary General, Eric Kaneko, underlined diplomatic engagement as the only pathway to sustainable peace and complete and verifiable denuclearization of the peninsula. Condemning the regime's repeated missile launches, an EU spokesperson urged the North to respond to calls for diplomacy by Seoul and Washington and engage in actions toward denuclearization. North Korea has yet to confirm its latest cruise missile launch, unlike the last 4 missile activities. The North previously did not publicize its cruise missile launches in April 2020 and again in March last year. But on September 13th of last year, the North had confirmed they had fired cruise missiles after staging launches over the previous 2 days. Considering the inconsistency, experts note the latest cruise missile launch was not worth a report for the North if it was, for instance, a part of the regime's wintertime military drills. There is also a possibility the launch could have failed, like the all-3 ballistic missile launches in April 2017. Unlike ballistic missiles, cruise missiles do not violate UN Security Council resolutions. If confirmed, Tuesday's launch will mark what is already the 5th show of force of the new year. 김다미, Arirang News.
Seoul Stoltenberg urged Moscow to play a constructive role in bringing Pyongyang back to the negotiating table and in diffusing tensions with the regime. On Wednesday, Noh Kyo-duk spoke with his Russian counterpart Igor Morgulov over the phone to discuss the North's recent missile launches and ways to prevent the situation from getting worse. Last week, Noh spoke to senior diplomats from the U.S. and China, just hours after North Korea hinted at possibly lifting its year-long self-imposed suspension of nuclear and long-range ballistic missile tests. Diplomatic sources say U.S. President Joe Biden has picked former North Korea sanctions enforcer Philip Goldberg to be the country's next ambassador to South Korea. If approved by Seoul and the U.S. Senate, a longtime career diplomat and current ambassador to Colombia will take a post that's been temporarily filled by acting interims for over a year after former Admiral Harry Harris stepped down as Biden assumed office last January. Goldberg previously served as America's ambassador to the Philippines and Bolivia. He is projected to take office after the South Korean presidential election in March. A year ago, South Korea's National Assembly passed a law that would punish CEOs or those in charge of the business if an industrial accident happens under their management. Companies are gearing up to make sure they don't become the first violator. Kim Do-yeon tells us more.
On January 11th, the nation saw this building suddenly collapse while under construction in South Korea, leaving 1 worker dead and 5 still missing as of Wednesday. The incident came just a couple of weeks before a new law is set to take effect in the country to safeguard against accidents such as these. Due to kick in this Thursday, it's called the Serious Accident Punishment Act, and its main purpose is to hold those at the top accountable for safety procedures not being enforced or followed. A death on site could result in a prison term of at least 1 year or a fine of up to 1 billion won or $835,000 if safety measures weren't managed thoroughly. Punishments for non-fatal accidents that lead to 2 or more injuries lasting more than 6 months could lead to a maximum of 7 years in prison.
Police officers or prosecutors are subject to at least 1 year in prison for causing bodily harm. It can be seen that the minimum prison time was stipulated for business owners or managers based on a similar level of duties, responsibilities, and morality.
As of now, the law applies to companies with 50 or more employees. Those below that threshold will be included in the law starting January 2024. Businesses will be walking on thin ice when the new law takes effect, especially those in the construction sector. According to the Ministry of Employment and Labor, of the 576 companies involved in serious accidents last year, more than half of them were in construction.
Our company recently reorganized the safety management team and is expanding the investment into the safety management budget. That said, we have a plan to practice safety management through a more systematic division of work.
There are definitely things being strengthened, and the companies in charge are coming out to do more frequent inspections because of the new law coming in. Also, workers are more alert and aware due to this new law.
The South Korean government is also trying to help companies adapt. The Ministry of Employment and Labor has allotted its biggest ever budget for safety issues at more than $900 million. However, the ball is now in the court of the country's judicial branch, as the manner in which the first individuals are held accountable will set the precedent for this new act. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
South Korea's population continues to shrink. As of November, the number of births has fallen every month for 6 years in a row. The number of deaths, meanwhile, reached a new high. There were fewer people getting married or divorced. All these were apparently exacerbated by the pandemic. Min Soo-kyun helps us look beyond the digits.
Women in South Korea are giving birth to fewer babies. The number of births has been falling on year for 72 straight months. That's exactly 6 years. A recent report by Statistics Korea shows that the number of newborns this past November stood at 19,800, down 1.3% from a year earlier. It's the lowest reading for any month of November on record. The agency explained this was due to a population decline in the 30s age group, as well as people delaying marriage and pregnancy. The country also reported its highest number of deaths for the month of November. More than 28,000 deaths were recorded, up 11% from the same month last year. The number of deaths has now outnumbered births for 25 straight months. And in November, the country saw its biggest natural population decline of 8,626.
One of the reasons is an aging population. The number of elderly deaths has been steadily increasing on average since 2010. Also, COVID-19 appears to have affected the number of deaths among the elderly.
Marriages in South Korea are also in decline, with fewer couples tying the knot. About 17,000 couples got married in November, down 6% from a year earlier. The record low figure for November was mostly attributed to a population decline of people in their 30s. The number of divorces also fell 1.2% on year to around 8,700 cases. Min Soo-kyun, Arirang News.
Moving on to other stories now, the number of passengers taking domestic flights in South Korea during the Lunar New Year holidays is set to increase by an average of 20,000 a day. Data released by Korea Airports Corporation shows a little more than 1.27 million domestic passengers are expected from this Friday until next Wednesday. The average daily number is expected to be around 221,000, which is 21,000 more than last year. Jeju International Airport could see the highest number of passengers, more than 469,000, followed by Gimpo International Airport.
Tomorrow, temperatures will be colder than usual. Most regions will see readings below the seasonal average. Because mornings will stay pretty cold for most regions, wide temperature gaps are expected. Places like Ulsan will see a gap of 11 degrees Celsius. Under such conditions of fluctuating temperatures, it's easy to catch a cold. Please be extra careful. The cold air will help ease off the fine dust for some areas. Clean air will be restored for the Seoul metropolitan area and the surrounding regions, with air quality standing in the normal category. But dust concentrations will stay high across Jeollabuk-do and Gyeongsang-buk-do provinces. Most regions will see overcast skies tomorrow. Seoul will start off at -5 degrees. Daytime highs will be 1 to 3 degrees lower than today. Seoul will get up to 3 degrees. Daejeon and Chuncheon 5 and Gyeongju will make it to 9 degrees Celsius. Mornings will stay colder from this point on. From this weekend, which is the start of the Lunar New Year holiday, lows in the capital will plummet to -7 degrees. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
These are the stories we're following at this hour. From all of us here at Arirang News, thank you for watching.